My greatest game was 1979, European Cup final, Nottingham Forest v Malmo. We knew that they were from Sweden, and that was about it. And I don't say that flippantly. You know, at Nottingham Forest, we never really discussed the opposition, regardless of who they were. In fact, in my time there, we only ever discussed two players that I can remember. One was a brilliant midfield player for Arsenal called Liam Brady, and the other one was a Dutch defender called Rudy Krol, who was another wonderful, talent. But apart from that, everything was about ourselves. Everything was positive from Brian Clough. There was never any negativity, and he only discussed how we were going to play. I wasn't able to play in the quarter-final. That's when I joined Nottingham Forest in the month of February. But if they progressed past there, I was able to play not in the semi, but in the final. So I was keeping my fingers crossed that that was going to happen. But of course, by me playing, it meant that one player who had played throughout the competition had to miss out, and that one player was Martin O'Neill. There was a lot of pressure on me, to succeed as a £1 million footballer, and obviously playing for one who was such a good goal scorer himself in his own right, Brian Clough, that put extra pressure on too, because any type of chance, it seemed to be an easy one for him because he was such an outstanding goal scorer. But I think the moment that I actually scored my first goal, that lifted a lot of the pressure off me. And even more so when I think it was Steve Daly, who was transferred for £1.5 million. That took a lot of pressure off me too. With most big games featuring Nottingham Forest and Brian Clough, it was rather low-key. We didn't train on the day. We went down to the Olympic Stadium to have a look around for the first time on the morning of the game. And that's when he sat us down on the perimeter of the field, on the running track, and he announced the 11 starters. We went back to the team hotel, had lunch, rested, and then we got down to the stadium an hour before the kickoff. That was done purposely, of course, not to get us there too early. He didn't want us losing our focus. He wanted us firmly focused on what was ahead, because obviously, for him, it was all about work, and that's the way it should be. Well, the game plan was just to play as we played all season, to do nothing different to what we had done. We got to the final by playing in a 4-4-2 formation, passing the ball, looking to keep possession whenever possible, getting into wide areas and getting crosses into the box. And obviously, you have to score. And we managed to do that. Well, I remember, being in a quite a deep position, some 35, 40 yards from goal, and the ball was played out to the left-hand side. And it was always, my directive, from the manager to make sure that I was in at the far post. Because whenever John Robertson received possession, as he did on this occasion, 9 times out of 10, he would go past his fullback and deliver a cross into the box. That's exactly what he did. And I had to make up a lot of ground to make sure that if that cross was coming in, I was there on the end of it. And as the cross came in, I had to make good contact with my head, and I tried to direct it back to where it had come from, and managed to do that. Without any shadow of doubt, he was Nottingham Forest's best player. We all recognise that, as teammates. But I'd also go a step further to say that that particular year, or years, plural, the following year as well, because we won the trophy the following year, he was probably the best player in Europe. Didn't quite get that kind of recognition, and I put that down to one reason. And with respect to Scots, he was a Scottish player. If he had been English, I think he would have been given a far, greater publicity, far greater media, and he would have been more high profile. But we appreciated what he did. He was an outstanding talent. There was a sense of anticlimax, because he believed in playing the game in the correct way. He believed that this was a showcase for him and Nottingham Forest. It was being watched, all over the world. And he wanted to see his players put on a bit of a show. We failed to do that. We won the game, but it wasn't a great performance. So it was rather subdued in the dressing room afterwards. There was very little said from Brian Clough or Peter Taylor for that matter. We just had a little get-together amongst ourselves and celebrated in low-key fashion. Because that was Brian Clough. He never did. You know, because once you finish that game, he was thinking about the next game. Albeit the next game was, of course, about 3 months away because that was the last match of the season for Nottingham Forest. But he was a great believer in taking each game, it's an old cliche, each game on its merits and not getting too carried away with success.